Back at it on SFO Grimhammer, big pimpin' with Arkhan the Black on the Wildwood update, and we're not done showing off all the new toys the Wood Elves have to play with. Followers of Nagash are on their home turf, near the Black Tower, and the Azrai have spent a curious amount of time spreading their seed in the Southlands, ever since Durthu woke up from that legendary bender and started his campaign in Liberos. The Ents are marching to war. There's a new squad on the block called Grove Guardians, a more damage-oriented variant of Treekin. Be interesting to see how they match up against Stalkers and Death Magic. I am playing as the Tomb Kings, and Arkhan, on his 6'4 Impala, has two Lords of Magic to work with, Death and Vampires, which is different from the tabletop, but lore-wise kind of makes sense because he is a Necromancer. Spirit Leech, Soul Blight, Raise Dead, and the Libra Mortis, but I forgot to bring his Tomb Blade, so only zombie summons. No Skelly Boys will be coming forth from that staff of Nagash. In my back line, Eyes of the Desert and two Stalkers, patrolling with Fell Bats overhead. Pretty nice option for sneaking up and murdering enemy cav, and a bunch of Nekharan horsemen, including the Storm Riders of Kassar Legion of Legend. Pretty beefy stat line on them, 100 speed, exactly the type of unit you want against the Wood Elves. Front line of skeletons, two Ushabti Great Bows to snipe out the high value targets, and a unit of Halberd Tomb Guard round out the rest of the build. Now for Aerocrastic and the Azrai, we're going to get a better look at the Dryad aspects. Each unit can equip an aspect that changes their stats. Oak makes them tanky but slower, and Birch makes them better in melee with lower armor. Looks like Birch is going to be the main one he goes for here. On his left, ride those patented Glass Cannon Light Cav, Glade Striders, and a unit of Wild Riders. Non-shielded variant with bonus versus infantry and a truly elite stat line. And then there's Orion, the King in the Woods, leading his war host with the Cloak of Isha and Horn of the Wild Hunt, which grants a massive boost of vigor map-wide, which will basically keep your entire army fresh for a huge chunk of the battle, which is incredibly strong, probably one of the best Lord items in SFO now. So being able to ignore those tired combat penalties on all your units is a really, really big deal. We'll see what kind of impact that can have overall. In the back, 4 Starfire Shaft Blade Guard for the added AP to take down constructs. And the most eye-popping unit in the update, the Grove Guardians, a unit of tree men that are more comparable to tree kin. They're kind of an aggressive version of them with much less HP, but better melee stats and bonus versus infantry. Their job is to cleave through Tomb Guard, and they can be exceptional in that role. Animations for them are maybe a little bit wonky. They kind of charge extremely quickly, like their animation's too fast for the lights to keep up, but they are pretty potent. Taking them down is not going to be easy. And if you know Arrow, you know that he loves to get aggressive with his light cav early. That's what we're going to see here. Glade Striders using that 60 charge bonus and that high AP to get super aggressive right into the front of the Skeleton Warriors. They're going to retreat, and the Fell Bats will harry their flanks as they try to make good on their escape. Arkhan the Black also nearby. Gonna get a few attacks in with the Pimp Chariot, and he will escape. But we're getting some good shots in with the Ushabti Great Bows, taking them down to about 2/3 of their health pool. Dryads are going to be a problem for the majority of my front line. Skeleton Warriors are not going to trade well into them at all. So a lot of this is going to come down to Arkhan the Black and the range firepower, and maybe those Storm Riders of Kassar harrying his backline, getting rid of the Glade Guard. The Ushabti Great Bows are firing at the Wild Riders, trying to take them down, and we're going to get a cheeky little charge into the Dryads through our own troops. But Orion and Aerocrastic combining to get a Hawk's Talon that will force a retreat. Mostly going to be able to escape, but Nekharan Horseman has very low mass, so a few of them did get tied down in and amongst their own skellies and took more damage there than I probably would have liked. Sepulchral Stalkers are firing in, and you might notice they're firing the old anti-infantry variant, that deadly gaze that turns opponents into sand, functioning like the pre-Shadow and Blade patch version. Apparently that is intentional. Have some thoughts on that I'll share in a second, but Awakening of the Wood creating some nice shade for the Grove Guardians to wade into, and here their roots, their mass, and their massive swords are cleaving these poor skellies apart. What was already a pretty lopsided engagement shifting even further in the Wood Elves' favor. Usirian gonna have his hands full today in the realm of souls. But yeah, in terms of the Stalkers, I kind of don't like they still have their old projectiles. I think it was one of CA's better changes to give them a high AP, high speed projectile that's good versus cav and monsters. It just fits their role better. Forces large targets to make a decision between taking the shots or charging into bonus versus large charge defense constructs where they might not do so well. But if monsters and cav can kind of just ignore their shooting, then there isn't as much synergy for the unit overall. That's a bit of a detriment to the Tomb Kings in general, but they're a really strong faction anyway. I actually wasn't aware it was still the old style of projectile until, with the high spread and slow projectile speed, until a little bit later in this battle. So spent a little bit of this time shooting into the wrong targets for sure, but they'll still do well against Dryads. They're going to be able to chunk through them pretty easy, and the ones that have gotten to my back line are already getting cleaned up by Arkhan the Black and the rest of my Stalkers. Nagkar Horsemen are moving forward, ready to unleash their ambush into the midst of the back line, supported by the Fell Bats. There are a lot of armor-piercing light cav ready to receive their charge, though, and I think Glade Riders might overmatch these Nagkar Horsemen in SFO. They've got that 60 charge bonus and the AP. It really does make them pretty potent in protecting your back line. Now, the Stalkers are through the infantry. Tomb Guard Halberds managed to do a great job of killing off some Dryads as well, and now we've got some arcing fire to duel up on those Grove Guardians and snipe them out of existence. Ushabti Summon in the back saw a perfect opportunity to gang them up with my Stalkers, and now we've got a full surround off. And normally I kind of preach holding on to that Ushabti Summon for the late game when maybe Orion's trying to get a full surround off on Arkhan the Black or something. You can pop that down and protect your Lord better, and then maybe if Stalkers and Ushabti team up, they can kill Orion. But at this point, there's just so many ranges to kill. I was like, this is definitely important. This is all AP. All these Glade Guard are Starfire shafts. They need to die. So that's what we're going to try to do. Kill them all off. But Flesh to Stone's making it a lot harder for me to kill the cavalry. You saw the Wild Riders get that Flesh to Stone. Prevents any models from dying for the duration of the spell, which makes it quite a bit more powerful than it is in the base game. And this is one way to deal with Grove Guardians. They have bonus versus infantry, so they will not thrive particularly well against Sepulchral Stalkers. This is why I brought 3 of these units. They support your back super well, can kill off any highly mobile threats or any big monstrous targets that make it all the way through, and Grove Guardians are starting to feel the wrath of the Eyes of the Desert. Glade Guard and the Glade Riders, the skirmish variant, are still harrying my flanks though, and the Stalkers managed to kill off a bunch of those Starfire shafts. Spirit Leech going down on the Wild Riders. Aerocrest did a good job of flaring out a few of his archers to the cliff, getting his back to that and protecting him pretty well, but he just had so many mobile threats, it made it pretty difficult for him to save all his Glade Guard. You can see, I'm making sure they don't come back. Full volleys into my Stalkers, even with their missile resist, is not particularly pleasant, chasing them all the way to the edge of the map, while we get some arcing fire in with the Ushabti Great Bow. Stalkers still dueling it out with the Grove Guardians and some Dryads, and they're performing admirably well for me at the moment. Definitely winning that fight, but I'd love to get a rear charge with the rest of my Stalkers. Unfortunately, they're all the way on the other side of the map, making sure the Starfire shafts do not return to the battlefield. So definitely not wasted time going after them, but unfortunately I do have to spend any time whatsoever sending Arkhan and the Stalkers over here. They're not expensive, they're only about 650 gold. So even though they are important for me to kill, it is time I'd rather spend killing the Grove Guardians or Orion. Orion is untouched up to this point. He's going to be a massive problem. He's unbreakable, obviously, and that bonus force large and huge armor-piercing pool makes it difficult for the Tomb Kings to chunk him down. The best way is probably to shoot him, and I do have some free Ushabti Great Bows firing into the back of these Grove Guardians, but their big HP pool and that high physical resistance is a combination. It's making it hard to snipe them out. It only kind of tickled the one unit over there. Stalkers will win this fight, it looks like. Grove Guardians might break. Starfire shafts are beginning to shift it maybe a little bit. We'll see how this goes. It's definitely more invested for the Wood Elves at this point in the battlefield. So Stalkers, yeah, they did great there. I was actually super impressed. They were able to push Dryads and the Grove Guardians back by themselves, completely on an island, unsupported. But the Ushabti have been shut down in melee by those 60 charge armor-piercing Glade Striders, and now they're getting rear charged by Dryads. Ooh, that's a nice play from Aerocrastic for sure. And the Wild Riders are relatively low, but they've been a terror all game long. Over 200 kills up to this point. Now, this is a bait. I want Orion to give chase, and then once we have a full surround off, Ray's dead, Stalkers charge in, Arkhan the Black charges in, and we can maybe kill Orion, wasn't perfectly executed, and I started thinking maybe I shouldn't go in there with a full surround off because the Glade Guard are still alive. And if you're able to fire into Arkhan the Black or my Stalkers and we're not charging them, well, we're going to be super blobbed up, and that'll allow Arrowcrest to rack up a lot of unnecessary damage on my constructs. Nice hammer and anvil. Textbook. Perfect play from Arrow there. And Arkhan will charge into the back of these Birch Aspect Dryads, but not gonna be enough to shift that in my favor. Shafty Greatbows just crumbled out of existence, and they died to Glade Riders in melee. Yikes. Okay, so things are looking not bleak yet, but it's tough. It's been tough for sure. Arrow's gotten some great engagements on the backs of those Glade Striders, and the Grove Guardians have been an HP sink that I just can't easily deal with. Spirit Leech going down on Orion. I don't think he has magic resistance, so that should be worth it, and it'll counteract some of the Horn of the Wild Hunt and lower his vigor a bit by 15%. Arkhan has to run though. Orion is on the hunt. He's got that Spear of Kurnis. Bonus for large and armor piercing. Arkhan has no chance of out-dueling the Chad Mel Gibson. He's a bony little necromancer nerd. Has to dodge, dip, duck, dive, and dodge his way away from those Starfire shafts, raise some zombies, and then run through his own second unit of zombos to get away from the wrath of the Avatar of Kurnis. And now he'll unleash his fury in and amongst the horde, the shambling tides of the undead. That's a lot of giblets, my dude. Orion's a beast. Definitely have to play the keep away game from him for as long as possible. Save him for the end. But the Followers of Nagash are starting to look a little bit thin. Beautiful charge into the Glade Guard to finish off the remnants of Arrowcrest's archers. With the support of the zombies, that will be more than enough to finish them for good. And Invocation of the Heck, alongside that Liber Mortis, will allow them to sustain through Orion's and the rest of the skirmish fire coming their way. Another charge coming in. Stalkers will survive that. 2 Tomb Guard models running around with 16 HP. Crumbling does not work the same in SFO, actually. They get a huge combat malice, a huge debuff when you begin disintegrating rather than just lose all your HP. So you essentially become useless in combat rather than just disappear outright. Grove Guardians fighting it out and finishing off a unit of Stalkers alongside the Wild Riders. Another beautiful engagement from Arrowcrest, and at this point, it is looking bleak. Unless we snipe out Orion, I don't really see a way back, and even then, might not be enough. Arkhan on his Pimp Chariot, killing off a bunch of Dryads, running through, using Shaiish to... Oh, look at that little shuffle, the Sex Offender Shuffle. The Forest of Loren has asked us to disclose our sexual crimes to you. Wild Riders with a nice charge from behind into the Stalkers, teaming up with Orion. Animation will try to keep the Stalkers in the fight with that plus 16 leadership. Zombie summons coming in too, but it's too much. There's just too much on the field left for the Azrai. Wild Riders are now getting Flesh to Stone, giving them a bunch more armor, giving them... I mean, essentially they can't lose models while that spell is active. And together with the King of the Woods, they will take the field on the Followers of Nagash home turf, on the Tomb King's home turf. Well played from Arrowcrest. It'll take a little bit longer for this army to crumble out, but it will be the Wood Elves' game to win. One more charge from the Wild Riders should pretty much seal it, and that'll be the end of the battle. So, there were a couple things I learned from this match as Curse goes down on a big blob of Azrai, and we get that really awkward shuffle coming over from both Arkhan the Black and from the Grove Guardians themselves. Very loud, too. A couple things maybe need to get a teeny bit of a rework on them, but it's a really cool unit. Really cool unit. But the things I learned, for one, the Stalkers in SFO still using the anti-infantry. My personal opinion is that it's better for the Stalkers if they're able to shoot into large targets and do a lot of damage to them rather than kill infantry. Their melee stats do not really allow them to kill infantry particularly easy. Did kill some Dryads that game with them for sure, but their role is anti-large. Unless I'm mistaken, they still have their charge defense against large in SFO. So their role is to hunt down large targets, large monsters, and kill them. And the best way for them to do that is have that high AP, high projectile speed shot that forces monsters to charge them and kind of put them in a catch-22. Because again, If the big monsters can ignore those shots coming in, then you just don't have as much synergy for the unit overall. Still, the Stalkers did well for me. There's no question about it. Didn't get absurd amounts of kills, but the stuff they did kill, like the Grove Guardians, were pretty high value. So I killed off one unit. I think they did rout off the field, even though it says they were about half HP, so finished that one off. The other one, I didn't do very much damage to at all, because I spent a lot of time firing anti-infantry projectiles into them, which is just not that good. Arrow had a really good army composition for this battle. I had essentially no answer to the Wild Riders, even though it was the anti-infantry variant. They're just so mobile, I had no way to catch them, and shooting them was not particularly efficient. I tried to shoot them down with these sharp great bows, but they moved so fast at 120 speed, couldn't shut them down. Orion and the Dryads, that front line, a bunch of them got over 200 kills. That front line just smashed through my skeleton warriors, and I had to layer my defense better if I wanted to pull that one out. But I think this came down to just a really good build and great micro from Arrow. Definitely deserved the win. Hope you guys enjoyed. More SFO coming soon.